Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be a meal prep, as you can tell. I've got 5 things on my list to actually do. First thing I'm going to do is the Snickerdoodle Zucchini bread because it's going to take so long to bake. So I melted 1 cup of coconut oil. Then I shredded, it took 1.5 zucchinis to get 2 cups of zucchini for this recipe. And I do not know what is going on with my camera lately, but every time I turn it on to film, even if it's not on the same surface as what I'm doing, the camera bounces and moves. So if you have any ideas, please let me know, because I've noticed that in a few videos and I still just don't get it. And I don't know why I melted the coconut oil first, but by the time I got done shredding the zucchini, coconut oil was melted all the way, so I guess maybe that's why. And this egg was frozen. I was having a hell of a time getting it cracked. But it's 3 eggs, that cup of coconut oil that's melted, vanilla. The whole recipe will be down below. I will link the recipe down below. I got it off Pinterest. I've been seeing it everywhere and hearing about it everywhere, and I went, you know what, I have a ton of zucchini, so I'm gonna do it. So I think I'm just gonna speed through this. Like I said, I have the recipe down below. Actually, I could probably do it for you and read it off to you if I'm smart enough to do that, but I'm doing this in the morning and my brain's not functioning quite yet. Okay, so yes, it's 1¼ cups of sugar added to the eggs and melted coconut oil, and then in the vanilla, of course, and then you whisk that together. And then in a separate bowl, you whisk together 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a teaspoon of baking soda, ½ teaspoon of cream of tartar. That's what makes it the Snickerdoodle thing. 1 teaspoon of salt, which I just eyeball salt. I don't ever measure salt. I don't care. And then you mix that together. Then you mix together the wet and the dry ingredients. And I'm all over the place when I'm cooking lately. Usually I'm not like this, but I don't know. It's like I don't have everything ready, even though I thought I did. I end up needing more. And I probably do need to measure better when I'm baking, but it turned out. Everybody loves it. My dad's actually eating this, which is so weird. But yeah. So yeah. And then after you mix the wet and dry ingredients together, it is extremely thick batter. It actually surprised me how thick this batter was when you mixed it together. And it said it would be thick on the recipe, so I'm thinking, okay. So I was going to switch to a spatula anyway, and I'm glad I did, because if I would have tried this with a whisk, I would have broken my whisk. But you'll see in a few seconds how thick this batter really is. So yeah, that's what the batter looks like before you add the zucchini in. And it's 2 cups of zucchini. So I measured 1 out, dumped it in, measured out the second one and dumped it into, and then It took a little while because the batter was so thick without the zucchini to get the zucchini mixed in, even with all the water that was in the zucchini. Because this recipe, you do not squeeze the water out of the zucchini, which surprised me. But after seeing how thick it was, it made sense. Because when I first did it, I was tempted just to squeeze out a little bit, and I'm like, nope, don't. It doesn't say to, so don't worry about it. And I'm glad I didn't, because you really need all that excess water. So this is what the batter looks like with the zucchini mixed into it. And I was going to make the topping before I put it in the pan. So it's half a cup of sugar, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a quarter teaspoon of cream of tartar to make the topping. I didn't measure the topping. I didn't see a point in it. And I stir with my measuring spoon so I know I'm done with my measuring spoon. So, yeah, because I don't want to dirty more dishes than I already did. So, what you do is you dump half the batter into, it says 2 5x8 loaf pans, I think, in the recipe. I used my giant loaf pan that I have. Then you top with half the topping, and then you top with the rest of the batter. Smooth that out as much as you can and top with the rest of the topping. Is that actually necessary? No, I don't think so. But I did what the recipe said. And maybe it is, because it is good. We've gone through almost a whole loaf of bread. Bakes at 350 if you use the smaller loaf pans for 45 to 50 minutes. Because I used a bigger loaf pan, it baked for about an hour and 10. If I would have taken that down to 325, it may not have taken that long. Now I'm getting started on the second recipe, which is Crockpot Apple Cinnamon Oatmeal. I got this from Miller Family Vibes. I saw it in her, I think it was back to school meal prep video, and it looked really good, so I wanted to try it. And I read some reviews, and they said it was more like an apple crisp. I'm thinking, okay, but it is more of an oatmeal. It really is. I don't know where the reviews saying it's more of like an apple crisp come from, but it is really good. I've had it 3 days now. And typically you would do this overnight. You put it in your crock pot, you cook it overnight. I did it, I started it at noon, and I figured, well, if it's more like an apple crisp, then we'll have it for dessert. So I started it around noon, it cooked. No, maybe I didn't start, I don't know. It cooked on low for about 6 to 7 hours. But it is really that good. I think it needs a little bit more cinnamon, but I just like cinnamon. So you start with your apples. And I used my mom's crock pot that is smaller instead of my big one for this, because I didn't want to make a whole bunch. I just wanted to make like a small amount. And then it's cinnamon, I didn't measure because I knew what it said, but I wanted a little bit more, and I still think I could have added more. And then it was a quarter cup of brown sugar. And you stir that together a little bit, like to coat the apples. Then you pour in 2 cups of oatmeal, 2 cups of water, and 2 cups of milk. And you don't stir that, and you put on your lid and you cook that either overnight if you're starting at night, or for 6 to 8 hours on low like I'm doing. So after I got the oatmeal started, I ended up prepping the peppers for dinner and the peppers and onions for my lunch. I had a clip of this, of me cutting these up, and I don't know what happened to that clip. So, I'm sorry, but we are making stuffed peppers for dinner, so I just halved the peppers and took the insides out and cut out the stems. And then I took another bell pepper and cut it into strips, and took part of a large onion that we had and cut into strips as well. And I coated that with olive oil and tossed it in some taco seasoning, because the original plan was tacos. And when I got out my ground beef, I realized I did not have enough ground beef to do stuffed peppers and tacos. And then I realized my brother grilled chicken breasts the other day, and I have 3 chicken breasts still left in the fridge that need to be eaten. So I'm thinking, okay, I do fajitas in almost every video, but I'm going to do fajitas because I have the oven on already, so I'm just going to season up my peppers and onions and bake those. Eventually, I will have a different lunch idea in one of these meal prep videos. I don't know when that will be, but those peppers and onions ended up being put in the oven for like the last 10 to 15 minutes of bake time. on my zucchini bread, and I ended up making chocolate pudding because I wanted chocolate pudding. For me is like one of those midday snacks. Like if I want something but I don't want something really heavy but I want something sweet, chocolate pudding is my go-to. And yeah, so I made my chocolate pudding. I made this a lot in several different videos. I will link the video with the recipe in it down below. But it's 2/3 cup of granulated sugar, 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, like a pinch of salt, and 2 1/4 cups of milk. Stirred in gradually, and then you stir that constantly, or well, almost constantly, until it boils and thickens. And then when it comes to a full boil, you let it boil for 2 more minutes. Then you remove it from the heat. That's when I took my peppers and onions out. So they looked good. They weren't crispy. They weren't too crispy, but they were exactly how I like them. Then I went back to my pudding for a little bit because it wasn't quite a rolling boil, but it was starting to boil a little bit. So, yeah. If you've never done this before, I highly recommend probably stirring it the entire time, or at least standing by the stove the entire time. And I was in the kitchen the entire time because I was doing a massive meal prep. And in between everything, I was trying to clean up a little bit. So I was stirring this, watching it, doing something else. Like, before it got done, I had to take out my zucchini bread. This is what it looks like when it's done. You let it cool in the pan 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can flip it out. I did not think flipping this out would be a good idea because I figured all the topping would just come right off. And it didn't. I'll show you in a little bit. But after I managed to get that out of my way, this was coming to a rolling boil, so I set a timer for 2 minutes and I stirred it constantly for those 2 minutes. Then after that was up, I took it off the heat and I added in 2 tablespoons of butter and a teaspoon of vanilla, or maybe it's 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I don't measure vanilla. I eyeball vanilla every time because, yeah. So, like I said, the recipe the video where I actually show this recipe a little bit more in depth will be down below, or maybe it'll be in the cards. It just depends on where I put it. But I was adding in my butter and vanilla, and I was going to stir that in. And then after I stirred that in, I set it aside so it could cool off a little bit while I had my lunch. Chicken breast that my brother had grilled a couple nights ago, or maybe the night before. I just cut it up into strips, heated up the amount I needed, along with the tortilla, added some of my peppers and onions, and I topped it with some melted Velveeta. Of course, it's not the best, but that's how I did my lunch this day. And of course, you can always pack this up and take it with you if you don't want to use Velveeta cheese. You can always just pack a regular cup of cheese and do that, or you don't even have to use cheese. But this is how I do it when I'm at home typically. And you also don't have to do fajitas out of this. You can do nachos or fajita bowls or taco bowls or whatever. But I did want to show it just because I do get questions a lot of times about how I serve it up. But this is the zucchini bread after it's been flipped out of the pan, and I let it cool for maybe 10 more minutes out of the pan. I just flipped it onto a cutting board, and then I'll put it in an airtight container after it's cooled completely, because it wasn't cooled off completely, but I did want to cut it and see what it looked like. I was trying to show you how it kind of caramelized. It turned really, the color was really good. I love all the little green flecks, but if you're going to feed this to kids, you might want to tell them it's sprinkles. I don't know, just something, just some random idea. Okay, so finally I am prepping the last, and I ended up doing dishes in between lunch and prepping this dinner because I had to clean up. It was driving me nuts. But I ended up using 2 pounds of ground beef, an egg, 2 slices of bread, another part of that large onion cut into, well, diced, and a little bit of rolled oats to make my filling for my stuffed peppers, and tomato sauce. If I'm making meatloaf, it's the same thing, except I use ketchup. When I'm doing stuffed peppers, I use tomato sauce because the peppers will end up cooking in the tomato sauce as well. You'll see what I do in a minute. And you can meal prep this relatively easy. Like, I cut up the peppers earlier, you mix up the filling, and you can set that pan in the fridge. And like I said, this is a little bit later, hence why I'm not wearing my sweatshirt anymore, because it finally warmed up enough that I didn't have to. And this is a dinner recipe, but you can meal prep this for lunch if you would like. Like, just cook it and then portion it out in containers and eat it for lunch. Or you could do it, like I said, you can meal prep it for dinner if you didn't want to do it all right before dinner. consistency that I want, I just stuffed my peppers. And you can leave the stems on. I know some people do. I don't. You can also fill them standing up. I like them cut in half better. I think it's easier to eat. So that's what I was just doing here. And if you wanted to do this earlier in the day and put these in the fridge, that would be perfectly fine. And then you could like go about your day and come home later and finish them off. And I am going to show how I finish them off. Okay, so to finish the stuffed peppers, I just take what was left of the tomato sauce that I used in the mixture and dump it in the bottom of the baking dish. And then I ended up having to use some tomato juice too. But either some kind of tomato sauce or tomato juice. This is how my grandma's always done it, so this is how I do it. And I filled the baking dish about a quarter of the way with the juice, and then these baked in the oven at 425 until the ground beef was done. I took them out about 10 minutes before the ground beef was done and topped them with cheese and put them back in the oven. So that's what's brown on top of them, because we like cheese with ours. And we serve these just like that, and we put a little bit of the tomato sauce on top of them. Okay, so like I said, I had all intentions of eating this as a dessert because the review said like apple crisp, so I did want to show you what it looks like when it's done. Then this is what it's like. I did kind of want to show it when I scooped it out so you can kind of see the texture. That's when I realized this is oatmeal. Like the recipe says, this is not like the review say, this is not apple crisp. But this is what it looks like. I don't know, it does not have much color to it at all, but it is very good. So, and remember that is oatmeal for like breakfast. So that's going to be it for this meal prep. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not done so already, hit the red subscribe button down below. I will try and remember to put recipes in the description box, as well as link some recipes in the cards. Thank you for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.